I'm quite thrilled to announce the 9th edition of Data Punkers today. And it's been quite a long journey since we started. And for me, it's quite incredible to have such a host today as the visionary that actually started the data warehousing at all, Bill Inmon, among us. Last but not least, this event was always about connecting this community. They're like quite important and interesting people from companies as CNC, Alza, IDC, Eon, Raiffeisen Bank. Well, what the hell? Everyone is here today. So make sure that after we end, that you grab some of our signature drinks there at the bar, and let's have some chat afterwards in the after party. So let's welcome Bill Inmon on stage.
Okay. Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's been about 25 years since I've been to the Czech Republic. About 25 years ago, in the early days of Data Warehouse, I made a trip over here, and it is wonderful to return. So I want to thank you for being here tonight. I hope you find what we talk about to be interesting and useful. I want to make some pictures for you. This picture here is a representation of really why we have Data Warehouse today. Now, let me explain this picture here. Once I was working for a large telecommunications firm in the United States, and this picture represented the applications and the movement of data across the corporation. This represented 10,000 people, if you can believe that. And what happened in each one of the lines, there are these red lines and blue lines and green lines and things like that, represent the movement of data from one application to the next. And so this, this is where the world was in terms of understanding data and applications. And what is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with this picture is that we had data, but we didn't know what data was correct. We didn't know what data to believe. It wasn't a matter of do we have data, it was a matter of what data do we believe. Because you see, in this maze of systems that we were building, we had the same data element with different values. In one place, the data element had one value. In another place, the data element had another value. And as a manager, how do you make valid corporate decisions when you don't know what data to believe? And this environment, by the way, there's a word for this environment. It's called spider web systems. And spider web systems were found everywhere, some bigger and some smaller, but they were found everywhere. Insurance companies, manufacturers, banks, military, government agencies, everywhere you went, you found these spider web systems. And people found that they couldn't understand couldn't believe the data that they found. And so this diagram represents the origins of the data warehouse, because one day I asked myself the question, how do we solve this problem? You see, trying to add more technology, trying to add more programmers, trying to add more applications and systems made things worse, not better. And so what we needed was an architectural solution for the mess that was being created in this spider web environment. And so trying to put information and systems and technology into this world was the wrong thing to do. What we needed was an architectural solution. And the architectural solution was to separate the transaction processing systems from the analytical systems. We needed a place where we could have a corporate understanding of data, where we could go to a single source and find information that was accessible, believable, and useful. And that's where data warehouse came from. Um, and I want to quickly go over to this slide here. You say, okay, Bill, tell me, how do you go from this world of um, complicated, unbelievable data to believable data? Well, you have to go in and integrate the data. Now, what do we mean by integrate the data? Every time somebody built an application, they could define the data however they wanted to. But if we're going to go into a corporation, we need to have a single understanding of what that data is. And let's take a simple example. A simple example might be gender. In one place, gender is male and female. In another place, gender is M and F. In another place, gender is a 0 and a 1. And that's good for the application, but when it comes to the corporate understanding of gender, we need to figure out one way to represent gender. And I don't care if it's male or female or MNF, doesn't matter, but it's got to be one way. And this is true for all kinds of data, not just gender. That's a very simple case. There are many more complex cases. So that's where data warehouse came from. Now I want to talk a little bit, very briefly, about where data warehouse is going to. I want to talk about not the past, but the future. When we look in today's corporation, we find something other than structured data. You see, when data warehouse began, we had nothing but what we call structured data, where data had a very well-defined structure, and that's what we were working with. In today's world, we have different kinds of data. We still have structured data, but we've also got textual data and we've got analog data. And in today's world, in the corporation, we find that we've got to start to be able to come to grips with we certainly have, again, structured data. It didn't go away, but textual data and analog IoT data. And so that's where the world is heading. It's going to be up to you and your children to make that world. I'm an old guy, and I probably won't be around long enough to see that world happen. But that's where data warehouse is going in the future. I'd like to say a few words about my friend Francesco Pupini. Francesco and I met a number of years ago, and I saw the work that Francesco was doing, and I thought that it was, first off, very valuable, very innovative, and something that the world needed to see. And I told Francesco, you need to write a book because there's a lot of people in the world that need to see the techniques and approaches that you have. And so I'm happy to have written a book with Francesco, and I'm happy that he's here tonight. So Francesco, I think it's your turn to speak.